Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, show number 243 for the 16th of June 2013. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. A bit dosed up on the old meds at the moment because I somehow have a sinus infection. It's not very nice, I must admit, and it's not going away quickly. It's not very nice at all. All those people out there who have had sinus infections will know what I mean. And for all you people who have never had one, I hope you never do. Nevertheless, we'll carry on. On this week's show, we dive into the pages of the latest magazine from Australian skeptics, The Skeptic. And in the issue just about to hit your letterboxes now if you're a subscriber, you'll read about the water divining tests in Mitta Mitta a couple of months ago. Well, at the top of the show, I read out my report from the Mitta Mitta tests, or more importantly, my angle, my view, my take on the mind of the believer. What's going on in the mind of the water diviner, and who are these characters? My report coming up at the top of the show. That's followed by Dr Rachie Reports, and what a Dr Rachie Reports it is. The Australian Vaccination Network have just been in court fighting the ruling that says they have to change their name. Dr Rachie brings us a report from the proceedings in the court. What an interesting Dr Rachie Reports this week. Following that, it's a week in science from our dear friends at the Royal Institution of Australia, www.riaus.org.au. I wonder what has been happening in this week in science, thanks to our good friend Paul Willis. And then we delve once more into the pages of the Skeptic magazine to find our stars. Yes, your stars. Be you Pisces, Gemini, Sagittarius, or Ophiuchus. The stars from the pages of the Skeptic magazine. Then to round off the show, Maynard's spooky action with an interesting interview with a cartoonist from the Manchester Skeptics known as Polyp. Or Paul. Take your pick. Anyway, he came to talk to the Sydney Skeptics a couple of weeks ago, and Maynard caught up with him in our special studio we have at Sydney Skeptics in the pub, otherwise known as the Stairwell. Conspiracy theories and more with Maynard's spooky action. And a message from our friends in the Australian Capital Territory, the Canberra Skeptics. Now, they have frequent talks. They're very active, I must say, the Canberra Skeptics, and don't forget they'll be holding the Australian Skeptics National Convention a bit later in the year. Looking forward to that. But in July, on Saturday the 6th of July, we've got an interesting talk by Nick Ware, Pseudoscience in the Climate Change Debate. Free admission. Now that's on the 6th of July from 1:30 to 3:30. And following that talk, it's a good opportunity to have a drink with your fellow skeptics at King O'Malley's Irish Pub. For more information, visit www.canberraskeptics.org.au. And our reporter Maynard requests, invites, and entices you to visit www.maynard.com.au to listen to The Music of the Amazing Meeting Las Vegas, Part 2. The Music of Tam. Find there also Maynard's extended interviews with John Flansburgh from They Might Be Giants and his extended interview with our good friend George Harab. Maynard.com.au. Just before we get into the show, I'm looking forward to meeting as many Skeptic Zone fans as I can at the amazing meeting in Las Vegas. If you've never been to an amazing meeting before, you're in for an amazing time. And I've just discovered that I'll be doing some water divining demonstrations in the hallway. I'm really looking forward to that. I'll be very busy. If you're coming to the amazing meeting, come up and say hello, and I'll give you some water divining lessons. Well, shall I say a demonstration? Well, shall I say a way for you to test water divining for yourself? That and power balance tests and demonstrations too. I can't wait. The amazing meeting coming up next month in Las Vegas. Hope to see you there. But for now, I'm going to run downstairs. I'm going to have a nice cup of tea with lemon and gin. Yes, that'll fix me up pretty quick. While I'm doing that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. From the pages of The Skeptic, the journal from Australian Skeptics, volume 33, number 2, for June 2013. Following on from reports about the Mitta Mitta Water Divining test, held by Australian Skeptics earlier this year. Divining at Mitta 3, the people. Richard Saunders looks at the people behind divining. Why do they do it? And why do they continue to do it? People often ask me why I became a skeptic. There are many reasons, but towards the top of the list is the work of James Randi. No surprise, I know, but one area of Randi's work stands out for me in particular. Around 1980, at the invitation of Dick Smith, Randi travelled to Australia to conduct the now legendary water divining tests. The documentary of these tests is available online. Simply Google James Randi in Australia. It goes without saying that this is a classic of skeptical investigation and a must-see for any skeptic, young or old. But putting the actual testing aside for a moment, I would like to concentrate on the real stars of the show, the diviners. We all may have an idea in our mind of what a classic Aussie water diviner might be like. A bushy, in their 50s to 70s, broad Australian accent, nice sort of bloke, or from time to time a woman. Someone who comes across as honest with an air of worldly wisdom gained from years of life in the real countryside. Well, I must say, this time the stereotype is spot on. We first encounter these wonderful Aussie folks in the documentary from 1980. We meet them again, albeit completely different people, 9 years later when Australian skeptics tested water divining near Sydney, and then again in 2001 and 2002 in Mitta Mitta for more tests. Again, the 2002 test is available online. Simply Google Mighty Mitta Muster Water Divining Test. This brings us to the most recent tests at Mitta Mitta in March 2013. Although none of the water diviners from 2002 were back, or from 1980 or from 1989 for that matter, their spirit is alive and well in what we might call the next generation of water diviners. The colourful crew who turned up this time would have been in their mid-20s or 30s in 1980. A few younger ones wouldn't even have been born. But by and large, you could pluck them out of time and place them back in any one of the tests from the past, and no one would know the difference. They have a certain look and outlook, a way of dressing, a way of speaking, and a way of thinking that has not changed in all these years. But why do they do it, and how can they be so creative with their responses to failed tests? To understand this question, we must try and put ourselves into the mind of the believer. It's not as hard to do as you may think. Say, for example, you play the piano. Now, every now and then you belt out a tune, people sing along, and you even make a few bucks out of it. Now imagine that one day if somebody tells you that if you can play a certain tune on the piano for them in their house, they will pay you $100,000. It seems like all your Christmases have come at once. You turn up, inspect the piano, have a look at the house, all seems fine. But when you sit down to start to play, what comes out of the piano is awful. Your fingers seem to be playing the right notes, but no real tune is coming out. The money is withdrawn, you have failed. If this happened to you, you would at once be looking for the trick or the reason as to why you suddenly failed to do something you know full well you can do. This, I submit, is what is going on in the head of the water diviners when they fail the tests. To them, water divining is real. It's something they do. It's beyond question that it works. I understand why they need to find a reason to explain their lack of success on the day. For me, one of the telltale signs that somebody is honest in their belief is the length and creativity they will go to in order for them to preserve their worldview. You can see it in their faces as they study the situation and come up with what to them explains the failure. This explanation then becomes a certainty and satisfies a vital need they have at the time. They have found a reason to justify their lack of success, and that reason has nothing to do with whether water divining works or not. In fact, the question of whether it works is not even entertained. The water diviners in Mitta in 2013 behaved exactly as predicted, and they thought along the same lines as their predecessors. I found them to be honest and sincere, with a real expectation they would succeed and collect the money. They are a genuine part of the Australian landscape, no matter what we might think of their paranormal claim.
Hi, I'm Finn. And I'm Rebecca, and we're the Skepticons. Skepticons is an Irish podcast by the Dublin Skeptic Society. It takes a conversational, irreverent look at science, news and skeptical topics from an Irish perspective. You can find us at www.theskepticons.com.
You're always sparing with your strong finance.
Now it's time for Dr Rachie Reports with Dr Rachel Dunlop.
Hello listeners, and welcome to another episode of Dr Rachie Reports. Now this week, the Australian Vaccination Network were in court again, challenging the order by the Office of Fair Trading to change their name. Now the OFT ordered them to do so following multiple complaints from the public and subsequent changes to the Incorporated Associations Act earlier in the year, enabling such an order to be made. The Minister for Fair Trading, Anthony Roberts, said, "The AVN's name does not accurately reflect the organisation's purpose and what it stands for, which is primarily to discourage the immunisation of children." Now, the first step in the AVN challenging an order to change its name was an internal investigation by the OFT, and this was completed in February 2013. The principal solicitor from the Department of Finance and Services concluded following his investigation, "All in all, the available evidence shows, in my opinion, that the AVN is mostly concerned with opposing vaccination and mandatory immunisation. When issues have two sides, it takes just one of them. One would expect that an organisation with the name Australian Vaccination Network would provide comprehensive and credible information on vaccinations in Australia and a balanced view in what is involved in the process. The AVN does not do this." So the AVN have been good at getting legislation changed recently. So far, they've been instrumental in getting the HCCC laws changed, and as a result, there is a current investigation into their activities and the childcare centre laws, which indeed may change again, given the AVN was silly enough to publicly proclaim that everyone should join a fake church to get a religious exemption. As a direct result of this, pressure is now being applied to close the religious exemption loophole in New South Wales. And the AVN have also been under continual fire from all angles, including a continued attack from the Murdoch media, who have only just begun to wind back their no jab, no play campaign after more than a month. Even today, there was another article about the AVN being investigated for fraud and not revealing their conflicts of interest when it comes to speaking to the media. But as you expect, the AVN didn't agree with the OFT name change order, so on Thursday and Friday they took them to court to challenge this claim. You might think, therefore, that if they bothered to go to court, they would focus on composing an argument detailing why their name is not misleading in an effort to convince a magistrate. But since we're talking about the AVN here, you'd be wrong, obviously. In addition, that would be no fun. So some members of Stop the AVN were in attendance for the 1.5-day hearing, and it is from their tweets and notes made by Shelley Stockton that I bring to you AVN versus the OFT, the Luzfest. So beginning at 2 p.m. on Thursday, our peeps noted that both Meryl Dorey and Greg Beattie were in attendance and the place was packed. There were also large cardboard laminated graphs, which, although never seen clearly, were thought to be the famous vaccine-preventable diseases declined prior to vaccines gambit. How these are relevant to a name change hearing is not clear, but you'll see that the AVN tried to use them anyway. Her Honour was heard to repeat the word irrelevant many times throughout the course of the hearing, and this may be one of those cases. Much of the first day appears to have been taken up with faffing and obfuscation on the part of the AVN, none of which was relevant to the matter at hand, i.e., explain to us why you think your name is not misleading. Instead, the AVN barrister argued that Stop the AVN were in cahoots with the government, that SAVN were big meanies, freedom of speech something, vaccines are not effective, and tried to admit new evidence, including witnesses for the AVN. One of these witnesses was thought to be Professor Brian Martin, the supervisor of Judy Wilyman, to which Her Honour said, "What is he an expert in?" When the AVN tried to introduce Brian Martin's evidence, the OFT lawyer objected, saying his affidavit is totally irrelevant and he has no idea how it found its way into the court. In any case, evidence was to be presented in the form of affidavits, not expert witness testimony. I wonder if Professor Martin caught the train up from Wollongong for nothing. The AVN's jabbering about people being mean to them on the internet was quickly shut down by the magistrate, who stated she is not interested in a he said, she said argument, and whether Merrill thinks she is anti-vaccine or not is irrelevant. It's how she is perceived. After the AVN's barrister mumbled something about their code of ethics preventing them from being anti-vax and everyone lolled for a bit, proceedings ended and the meetings from SAVN retired to the pub. So not a lot was achieved on day one. Enter day two. So day two opened with the revelation, and the very interesting revelation, that Merrill Dorey had apparently emailed the OFT barrister and the magistrate overnight, apparently to complain about people live tweeting the proceedings. Now, I am not a lawyer, but this seems like an extremely unwise thing to do from my perspective. We can only hope that Merrill maybe pulled a Freeman on the land again, as she has before when she was corresponding with the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Now, if you don't know what Freeman of the land is, I encourage you to Google it. It's incredibly funny and you will be rewarded with lots of luz. In any case, the magistrate did not acquiesce to Merrill's request to stop live tweeting. Yet the irony of Merrill attempting to quash live tweeting while constantly yelling free speech has not escaped anyone here. So the AVN lawyer on day two took one last punt at arguing about vaccination before being brutally rebuffed by the magistrate. Half a day and several hours later, we finally get to the evidence for the case, which is why we're here. So I have borrowed heavily from Shelley's detailed notes here, and thanks for paying attention, Shelley. The OFT's submission was in 3 volumes, and volume 1 was the size of a phone book. The next stage of proceedings is deciding which evidence can be admitted, so there was a long, lengthy period of legalese and crossing out paragraphs with red texter, etc. Then the AVN barrister steps forward to argue their case. He argues that the AVN can be considered a vaccine choice lobby because some of their material says, ask your GP or naturopath. And lots of people who have been initially taken in by the AVN eventually end up vaccinating. Okay. He then says that the AVN is not obliged to present the other side, just like anti-abortion, anti-euthanasia or anti-logging organisations would not invite readers to read opposing views. Right, but then doesn't that make the AVN anti-vax? He then presents a screenshot from the AVN Facebook page where some pro and anti-discussion had occurred, and also the Yahoo group Respectful Debate site, as evidence that the AVN allows opposing views. I guess he forgot to show the About section of the AVN Facebook page, which clearly states that no opposing views are allowed, and unless you are a fan, you will be deleted and banned. A statement from Greg Beattie is then read out describing how the AVN would never tell parents not to vaccinate because it says so in their code of ethics. In response to which the gallery falls about laughing at the use of AVN and code of ethics in the same sentence. The AVN barrister then says there is nothing wrong with the name itself. Rather, it's the way it's used that the complainant objects to. Yes, nobody disagrees with that. And anyway, they're only complaining because they want it for themselves. Really? So this is all about the Office of Fair Trading wanting to steal your name. Okay then. I'm not exactly sure where he's going with this, but okay. The AVN barrister also argued against the name change since, 1, it was fine when they registered it in 1997, and 2, a complaint to the OFT in 2002 about the name being misleading was unsuccessful. But the legislation regulating misleading names was only changed in February 2013, so this point is moot. He also argued for the magistrate to consider the inconvenience such a change would bring to the AVN, to which the magistrate apparently appeared unmoved and unimpressed. An argument that there are other groups around the world that also have misleading names, so na, also seemed fairly useless in the context of changes in legislation in New South Wales and fails to win the barrister any friends. The DFT's evidence is next, and it consists of statements from people describing the circumstances surrounding them being misled by the AVN. This includes evidence from the Australian College of Midwives, who publicly claim to have been misled when sending out invitations for an AVN seminar. They later retracted the information and apologised, claiming they didn't know the AVN was anti-vax. Now, incredibly, the AVN also presented the College of Midwives story, but claimed that the College of Midwives were lying when they issued a retraction and apology. Rather, they only did so because they were embarrassed by the public reaction. According to a statement tabled by one of the midwives, she has been on the AVN mailing list for years and knew exactly what they were about. Now, I don't really know what to make of this, but suffice it to say, the OFT's evidence consisted of much more than just the College of Midwives, so I doubt this would deleteriously impact their case. The OFT's barrister's evidence continued with a browse of the AVN website looking for the other side, and of course turning up nothing. Quoting from the website, he said, "Because every issue has two sides, where is the other side? Healthy unvaccinated and vaccine damaged," he says, "well, where are the healthy vaccinated?" And quotes all matters and all of the information, yet there was no healthy vaccinated information. In response, the AVN's barrister argued that the inclusion of vaccination in the name of AVN doesn't necessitate the provision of pro-vax information, and that information on the website is not required to be a 50-50 pro-anti. Suggestions that the information the AVN provides counterbalances the prevailing medical orthodoxy and may not be available elsewhere is only in support of them changing their name. This is Merrill's argument too, that the AVN provides the other side of the argument, and if this is so, then they should call themselves anti-vaccine. By this time it was 4 o'clock on Friday, and Her Honour retired with decision reserved, meaning she has to go away, read the evidence, and come back with a decision at a later date. There was no indication of when this might happen, so we just wait. I don't care to make any predictions because I don't understand this section of the law, and in general, law is an ass, and last time I was gobsmacked when the HCCC case was won by the AVN. But I will say this, based on what I saw from peeps who were there, the AVN's evidence was weak. And if I were Her Honour, I would have taken 100 points from them for wasting all of Thursday and half of Friday with irrelevant information. But sadly, I don't think the law works that way, if only it did. You'll find the accompanying blog post on this week's Dr Rachie Reports on the official blog of the Skeptic Zone at skepticsbook.com. And until next time, this has been Dr Rachie Reports.
Hi there, this is Ben Radford from Skeptical Inquirer magazine, the Monster Talk podcast, Discovery News, Skeptical Conferences, and elsewhere. You may also know me as the guy that solved the Chupacabra mystery. I want to let you know about a cool new board game I created called Undead Apocalypse, War of the Damned. Undead Apocalypse has vampires and werewolves and zombies all battling it out in a post-apocalyptic world with humans. So it's sort of like Mad Max meets The Walking Dead. So if you're interested in zombies and werewolves and vampires or board games of any kind, or my work, please check it out. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Undead Apocalypse, the fast-paced board game where you control armies of zombies, vampires, werewolves, and humans in Earth's final War of the Damned. Learn more at undeadboardgame.com or support us on Kickstarter.com before July 8th.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus. This week, could a cheetah beat Usain Bolt? a blood test for Down syndrome, and the migration of humans into Southeast Asia. The cheetah may be the fastest animal on land, but is speed really its best hunting tool? Their hunting behaviour suggests no, with the big cats not generally hitting their top speed in a chase. Instead, a study of 5 wild cheetahs found that their ability to change direction and accelerate quickly is what makes them such successful predators. This fast acceleration requires a muscle power output 4 times that of champion sprinter Usain Bolt. Debate has raged as to when humans migrated out of Africa to Southeast Asia. New findings suggest the migration happened after the volcanic supereruption of Mount Toba in Indonesia, around 74,000 years ago. Genetic and archaeological evidence suggests that modern humans migrated along resource-rich coastlines from Africa to Southeast Asia around 50 to 60,000 years ago. You're listening to A Week in Science from RiAus. And now, 4 science headlines in 30 seconds. A simple blood test for mum can accurately detect Down syndrome and other abnormalities in first trimester babies. Obesity during pregnancy increases the risk of preterm births. Loggerhead turtles use sight rather than sound or smell to detect snacks. And researchers have found nail stem cells in mice, using them to regrow amputated digits. The location of the stem cells explains why mammalian fingers and toes don't regrow if amputated below the nail. And finally, your baby may have more sympathy than you think. A Japanese study examined when babies develop feelings of sympathy using an animation of a blue ball attacking a yellow box. Babies as young as 10 months preferentially reached for the victim in the film rather than the aggressor. The same result was found when the colours and shapes were switched. This shows that infants not only evaluate the roles of victims and aggressors in situations, but feel sympathy for the victim. Our next Science Behind the Headlines event will look at personal genetic profiling. From Angelina's double mastectomy to increased insurance premiums, this is a hot topic. Join us live online or at the Science Exchange in Adelaide on June 25. Details at riaus.org.au. That's been the highlights of another big week in science. For more information and other science news, check out the RiAus website, riaus.org.au, where you can also sign up for notifications of future episodes. You can follow A Week in Science on Twitter using the hashtag WeekInSci. I'm Paul Willis, and on behalf of the RiAus team, I'll see you next week.
Yeah, right, guys. I was talking to Richard Saunders the other day.
All right.
He said if we record a trailer for our podcast, Skeptics with a K, he'd play it on their show.
Well, that's nice of him. That's very generous.
It's pretty good. I'm not sure what we could do, though. I mean...
Well, I suppose you tell people what the show's about.
But it's basically just this.
Yeah. But... Yeah, we talk about science and skepticism and things.
That's true. I suppose you mentioned the website address.
What, Merseyside-skeptics.org.uk?
Yeah, or just like search us on iTunes. Oh, and then we could end with like a big song like The Skeptics with a K podcast.
No. Don't do that.
From the pages of the Skeptic magazine from Australian Skeptics, we bring you your stars for June 2013 with our astrologer, Dr Duaf Egaf. Aries. When the heavens fall, we'll see shooting stars. Roger Moore is a good example of a shooting star, or a star that shoots. I wonder if he reads this astrology column. Taurus. The poor people in your star sign are not very good spellers. I know this as I too suffer from pure spelling. The message is never give a scrupulist and yours goodbye. Gemini. Owing to a strike, no black cats will cross your path today. The cats are demanding better conditions and will be replaced by strike-breaking rats. Those rats are really rats. Cancer. You cannot undo what has been done. But sometimes you can do it again. Unless you want to undo it, then you cannot undo it again once it's been done again. Look, it's not me saying this, it's the stars, I promise you. Leo. Your father's father's father was your grandson's great-great-great-grandfather. I think. I better ask the stars. Nope. They're not sure about this one either. Maybe he was your great-great-great-grandmother. Virgo. Today is not yesterday, but it will be tomorrow. Tomorrow for you is another day. Make sure you live for today and not for tomorrow. That will be yesterday, the day after tomorrow. If you're reading this tomorrow, then ignore this wisdom until next week. Libra. People born under your star sign sometimes suffer from writer's block. I lived in a writer's block once. The noise from the other writers clacking away on their computers stopped me from writing. Scorpio. The stars have revealed to me the secret of winning lotto. If you buy all the lotto tickets on sale, you are sure to win. Makes sense to me. Ophiuchus. Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. I bet there are more grains of sands in an hourglass than days in your life. Time to stop watching daytime TV. Record it and watch it at night. Sagittarius. Your lucky dice are loaded against you. Not very lucky, eh? If you roll 2 sevens, you'll know something has gone wrong. Capricorn. The last word of this sentence is something you'll see in the future. Oh, too late. Now it's the past. It's amazing how the universe works, isn't it? Aquarius. Someone you know is having a birthday this month, or last month, or next month. Yes, I too am staggered at the insights given to us by the stars. Pisces. You used to be a skeptic, but now I feel you're not so sure. I used to be a believer, but I think being a skeptic is more fun. Does believing you're a skeptic make you less of a skeptic? Not even the stars know the answer to that.
Hi, this is Brian Dunning from the Skeptoid podcast at skeptoid.com. For 15 years now, Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz has been a part of Australian skeptics. Each month, the mysterious Dr. Bob comes up with questions that defy all logic and reason. Only the best of the best dare attempt to answer these brain twisters, and no, Google won't help you. Visit drbobsquiz.wordpress.com, that's DRBOBS quiz.wordpress.com to take part and to see the complete archive of Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Look, I'm talking to our featured speaker here at Skeptics at the Pub tonight, and as usual, I was completely up the back next to a group of women that are still there that were having an intense argument about work using phrases such as, my office door is always open, let me be clear, and at the end of the day. So I knew that wasn't going to go very well, and they actually started screaming during your speech. Now, what is your name and what were you doing here this evening, sir?
Right, my name's Paul. I'm from Manchester Skeptics, and I was talking about conspiracy theories.
I could see your slides. I saw Alan Jones up there. I saw a few of the famous...
Alex
Jones. I'll see, because I always get it mixed up. See, Alex in America, Alan Jones here.
Ah, right, okay.
Now, what has brought you into talking about conspiracy theories? And I'm in Manchester, there'd be a few about the football team alone.
Well, I'm a political activist. I work as a political cartoonist, and I sign my work...
So those were your drawings?
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
not all of them. I mean, half the drawings I showed with this other artist who's a conspiracy theorist advocate, who I've been having this long-term spat with. So I was kind of basing my talk around that, about what a political activist like me makes of the conspiracy theory people who kind of share some of the same anti-George Bush sentiments as I do, but go off into fairyland with their ideas.
Look, I'm a champagne socialist from way back, so I'm kind of on board with you there. And how did you get into doing this? Why did you decide to go on and take on these conspiracies? Was there one day you just saw something and you thought, no, this is beyond the pale, I've got to start getting into this?
I think it's about stuff that's on your own patch, you know. I mean, I very much want people to associate the Occupy movement and radical environmental campaigning with something that's respectable and something that is actually trying to make the world a better place. And when you've got people who are going off on all this kind of rubbish about the Twin Trade Towers being an inside job, I think they very much discredit conventional political campaigners, and so I feel it's kind of it's my sort of patch, and that's how I got fascinated.
Has this always been the case, or has it grown up more in the last decade or so? I mean, in the 60s there was plenty of theories. I mean, Kennedy kind of brought himself into power in some ways. There was a bit of tampering with votes going on there, with Johnson even perhaps. So yep. I mean, there are conspiracy theories. I mean, Hitler had to get there somehow. There was a few conspiracies that have their basis in reality.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was saying earlier to somebody that if somebody had approached you and talked to you about Abu Ghraib and sort of said, well, what's happening in these prisons that America has established is that people are being assembled into naked pyramids, you'd be, oh, come on, give me a break. The Americans might behave very badly sometimes, but they don't go that far. So, I mean, some conspiracy theories turn out to be true, and I've after watching Oliver Stone's JFK, I was a bit tempted to think
back and to the left.
Yes,
back
exactly.
and to the left.
Yes, until you start looking into actually the ballistics behind these things. But it's almost as if they're political metaphors. These things. It's like if you're really angry with the Bush regime, it's not that big a step to start believing that they actually did an inside job, because they are quite a devious little crowd. But of course, it's massively discrediting if radicals are going to go around saying these things. So I suppose it's about trying to keep your own house in order for me, because I consider myself to be a radical, and yet these people are talking such nonsense.
And how do you feel about that when it actually turns into boots on the ground and actual votes? Like in the UK lately, you've had the ultra-right party doing quite well in elections. Now, as a lefty, that's almost like time to get the bat out and fight in the streets.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things I talked about tonight. That you might think it's harmless that some radical campaigners flirt with the idea of 9/11 being an inside job, but what you'll also find is that on the back of that, it's a bit like the slippery slope of I'll accept one idea and then I'll accept the next. People are starting to talk about how the Holocaust was actually hoaxed, and it was faked, which of course resembles the 9/11 case, doesn't it? And a minority of people who are angry about what's happening in Palestine for perfectly good reasons are starting to kind of flirt with that kind of talk, that not only is Israel foreign policy completely unacceptable, but maybe the Jews actually faked the Holocaust as well. And as lefties, we have to be so on guard with this sort of thing. We really have to police our own shop and make sure that we don't drift in that direction.
And where does someone fit into the UK scene like David Icke, who has probably the wildest conspiracy theories? And on the surface, the idea that there is a realm of demons that are drawing power from the negative energy generated by our thoughts and images on this planet, that flies with me. I say, why not? Why not? Of course, that energy hasn't been measured or tested or anything, but I've been in a room with some fairly negative people and I've got some energy off that. So, I mean, there are some people that go for that with David.
Well, I mean, if people like David Icke were only talking about these things as metaphors, I think it would be amusing and entertaining. And as I said during my talk, some of the things that Icke says about consumerism, I'm in sympathy with. I mean, you may or may not know that he became spokesperson for the Green Party in the UK.
Went from football commentator to the Green Party.
Football commentator, a goalie. First of all, he was a goalie. I think, was it for Norwich? I don't follow football. He was a goalie, then he was a sports commentator, then he suddenly became this saviour figure. And a lot of the, slightly mystically inclined people I know will sympathise with a lot of things he says. Because the metaphor that there is this horrible reptilian elite controlling the world, I think to some extent might reflect reality. But only if you don't take it seriously.
Yeah, only as a metaphor.
Yes, exactly. And that's why he's not taken very seriously. But then, as I said during my talk...
Does he have a certain anti-Semitic tail on the end of his followers as well, or not?
I think that's hugely debatable. Lots of people have sort of said that he's using reptiles as a symbol for Jewish people. But, I mean, in the research I did today, just to polish the talk, I actually found that an article of his was on this site called Radio Islam, which was virulently anti-Semitic, and he was talking about certain people use Zionism as a code word for what they want to say about Jewish people.
When in fact its correct usage is usually the political intent of the Israeli government. Is that the correct way to...
Well, it's people who believe that there absolutely should be a state of Israel and that takes number one priority over other concerns in the Middle East. But yeah, I mean, Ike's not taking that seriously in England, but I just think it's interesting that abroad he is.
He appeals to me because I like it when people take the piss out of the royal family. And the idea that they're there going, ha-ha, and they take off their masks and gobble up a bit of blood or something, that appealed to me a little bit, again, as a metaphor and a humorous thing. But you're right, there are people that take him seriously, even in the UK.
But I mean, well, yeah. I mean,
because he draws huge crowds, and people pay up.
He sells books, he does. But then, I mean, so does homeopathy and so does lots of other nonsense. And it's exciting to feel that you've tapped into a secret that nobody else is aware of, isn't it? I mean, the trouble is that, what he's done is he's based a lot of his beliefs on science fiction movies. And V, the I think 1970s, showing my age.
I think it was late 70s.
TV series about this group, this elite group, working with the government, taking over the media, taking over industry, and actually being these horrible Nazi parasites.
Yeah, well, the original show was a parody of the actual Nazi apparatus, how they took over. So that's where he's coming from.
And it also showed ordinary American citizens becoming terrorists against it. I mean, it was the Battlestar Galactica.
Yes.
Of its day. But I think we might be geeking now.
Oh, look, that's fine. Look, and because
skeptics, you can get away with geeking.
And because I must say that I was a big supporter of the second season of Battlestar Galactica when they came to Earth, and no one ever put that in the canon. That was not allowed. But Battlestar Galactica 1980, where the Zylons came to Earth and put out forest fires and became nice. Did you ever watch that?
Of course I did, Maynard.
See, the second season, no, we were just geeking out.
Lord Green? Oh, yeah.
This is the Doctor Who club, isn't it? And not the Skeptics.
Hey, I liked the unpopular Doctor, the one that came after Tom Baker. I liked him because he was known... no, it must be the one after that. The one that punched and was known as the unpopular Doctor.
Oh, the vet. Can we get back to skepticism?
Yeah. Now, what do you think is the most dangerous conspiracy of them all? One that might seem harmless, or the one that you think is the most dangerous?
It's got to be anti-vaccination. Absolutely. I mean, I kept referring during the talk to, maybe skeptics are a little bit silly because we take all, we're the only ones who take this stuff seriously. The public, I was about to say the British public, the public will listen to these crazy theories and think, oh yeah, that's very funny, lizards and all that kind of thing. But anti-vaccination is one where people are actually dying. And I think, from a political point of view, if people want to identify the mother of all conspiracy theories, it's got to be the one that Hitler came up with. And 6 million people ended up dying. I think that's an example of what can happen once you go down this irrational route. I mean, I suppose you could argue that religion is a conspiracy theory. Certainly creationism is a conspiracy theory because there's the only way in which the creationist case makes sense is that all these scientists are deliberately colluding to fake information. So that's probably the one that's most active in the world today. But, look at anti-vaccination and the harm that's doing.
And in all your studies, you're a learned man, you're a man of politics. Is there one conspiracy theory that you would kind of like to be real? You'd go, well, that would be good. That would solve a few problems. That would answer a few questions if that was real. Is there one you would like to be real?
Well, good question. Yeah. If it was true that George Bush and co. organised 9/11, then our job of discrediting the right wing and destroying the neocons forever would be so easy. All we would have to do is prove that they were behind it and they would never get elected again. And same with the Kennedy one. If you could prove to the American public that the establishment had assassinated this loved character, there would be a revolution overnight.
Lee Harvey looked very surprised when they said, "Did you shoot?" He was like, "I didn't do it." He looked very surprised.
Well, you don't necessarily have to believe that the establishment killed JFK to believe that he might have been a patsy. Who knows? I mean, the point is we don't know, and secrets are kept from us, which is what I was saying earlier about Abu Ghraib. But you still have to be rational. You can't just go, you can't just grab this ball and go running off where you want with it. And the evidence has to back you up.
What you pointed out too is that all these extreme theories about 9/11, for an example, could mask something simpler than pure incompetence and covering up the event that maybe they knew was going to happen, or they got it wrong and they've been covering their arse. That maybe these larger theories cover that.
Well, this is what makes me angry about them. I think there are so many very simple injustices that need addressing. I mean, look what happened to those Bangladeshi factory workers recently in that fire.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that people should be angry about on a day-to-day basis. The appalling wages that are paid to people who produce staples like coffee and this slave system that we have running across the world. People should be angry about that.
It's also something you can actually you can do something about that more directly than you can actually finding that thermite.
Yeah, every political hardcore campaigner that I know, and I'm talking about people who've been to jail for their beliefs, they do not have any truck with conspiracy theories, because they'll all say, all right, supposing it is true, right, that the government organised 9/11, what do you want me to do that I'm not doing already?
Yeah.
I'm trying to depose these people. I'm trying to sort of strengthen democracy. I'm trying to make the world a better place. What is it you actually want me to do? If I agree with you, how does it actually make any difference to how I behave on a day-to-day basis? None.
Yeah, and I'd like some evidence before I go and get myself in jail. I'd like some evidence of why I'm doing it.
Well, yeah, and there's the other thing about, like, if you just believe conspiracy theories, then your objective is to convince other people that the conspiracy theory is true. There isn't actually somebody you can go and lobby. You can't go and lobby a company.
It's so big, you can't do anything. So that's a good excuse for doing nothing.
Yeah, and also you can't lose. I mean, people who go and occupy a forest that's about to be cut down by loggers can lose, and that's humiliating. I mean, it's humiliating to lose a political campaign. Whereas as a truther, how can you lose? Because you know the truth. There isn't a set objective to your campaign, like there might be if you're Friends of the Earth and you say, we're going to make sure this dam doesn't happen. You could win or lose. These people can never lose, and yet they draw enormous emotional comfort from their beliefs.
I've been asking tonight when enough is enough, when the skeptical movement should consider a battle won on a personal level or on a blog posting. When do you go, no, I'm walking away from arguing with this person?
That's a tricky one.
Because judging from a little bit of what you were saying there, you hang on for a while. You're a determined bastard.
Yeah, I know. You've got to be the dog, the dog yapping at the ankles, haven't you? I don't think you should give up, because there's an audience listening. There's an audience listening to what you're saying, and if you can't change the mind of the creationist or the 9/11 truther, if you're arguing on YouTube or if you're arguing on Facebook, there are people listening. And the public is listening, and I think you demonstrate what rationality is, and you make it attractive, and you make it the humorous point of view, and you make it the calm, reasonable one. I think you do it because people are listening, and what else changes the world other than debating and taking action?
And where can we read, listen, and look at what you're on about and what you've been debating?
Well, if you want to see where I'm coming from politically, you can go to my website, which is Polyp, which is polyp.org.uk. Polyps, as in coral reefs. You can see what I have to say there, and there's also all kinds of links that you can pursue if you go to that site.
And you've got any more dates here in Australia before you go?
Yeah, just before I go, one of the things that I politically believe in is cooperation, and I've just recently published a book, The History of the Cooperative Movement, and it also, Chapter 3 of that graphic novel looks at the science behind cooperation and the fact that this line we've been sold about nature red in tooth and claw, and to some extent the selfish gene, although I wouldn't want to criticise St Richard of Oxford. We have some interesting things to say about that, so if people want to come along to that book launch, that's at Abbey's bookshop on York Street at 6 o'clock on the 4th of July. If people want to come along, there's another debate to be had there.
And one last pointed question. Did you buy a copy of Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead recently?
I produced the T-shirt. I really did. I produced a T-shirt saying "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead."
Were you one of the people dancing on the?
I missed it all. I was here.
And it was great to have you here in the country at the Skeptics in the Pub, and do have another drink, and thanks for chatting to us.
Yeah, no problem at all. Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Have you heard the one about how the Illuminati, in conjunction with the US government, are hiding the existence of aliens in order to ensure the supply of helium is kept low? Or that the CIA, the militant wing of the Freemasons, are working with the Elders of Zion to take control of the population of the world through fluoridated chemtrails? Canberra Skeptics Incorporated, on behalf of the Shadow Government, will be massing an array of dark forces for the Australian Skeptics National Convention 2013. This convention has conspired to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, possibly the most famous conspiracy theory of all time. If you've ever wanted to learn about the truth behind the death of JFK, what makes for a good conspiracy theory and why they are so prevalent, Canberra Skeptics invites you to attend. That is, of course, should you choose to accept it. Come to nationalskepticsconvention.org and just remember, they will be watching you.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Now, while I've been a little bit under the weather lately with this rotten sinus infection, I've been spending some time making a new range of my one of my hobbies, doing origami paper jewellery, origami earrings. I've discovered that if I make them out of banknotes, like old Zimbabwe money or money from around the world that's no longer in use, you can buy it on eBay, it really does make the most beautiful origami because, forgive me for going off in this tangent, listeners, because banknotes are usually not only very colourful, but they're detailed. Banknotes are very, very detailed, well, obviously to try and counter counterfeiting. Anyway, the results are very pleasing. I thought I would just mention that. If you follow me on Facebook, there's a little gallery there of some of my little bits of origami. But for now, for this week, and I hope I'm fully recovered for next week's show, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.